So how did we get here? Why are we here? Why is this deja vu? Why are we going back and doing this contracts bill again? Let me explain kind of how we got here. House Bill 622 it made it out of the House and did not make it through the Senate through the veto proof period, but it did make it after veto proof period, and it was actually probably the last bill that went through A&R in the Senate before we went out of session. I went to Senator McDaniel, which just stepped out of the room a while ago, and he basically said, "Give me agreed to language. We need agreed to language." The House Bill 622 is a contracts bill. I think a very common sense bill. It is the framework for more efficient government. We deal with not millions but billions of dollars today. House Bill 1 of a couple of years ago, billions of dollars, billions. What this does is set a framework and a structure that when someone is going to get money appropriated from us, we are asking them and putting in the force of law that they would have to go through a contracts process, and they would have to sit down and explain and understand and kind of go through a template of the contracts process and how they would fill it out. And if there would be a dispute during that process, if something didn't get paid, how that would work. Typically now, we weren't telling people that they didn't have industry standards, like maybe the highway department came to us and said, "We already have our standards. We really do this good. We don't want this to interfere." I said, "We're not trying to get this to interfere. This is a template. This is a contracts that industry standards, whatever you have already, and if it's working, we want it to continue to work. But just for framework, we want to be paid on a 30-day basis." Now, if you turn in a bill and for some reason you turn in 10 items and 2 of those are not fully complete but the other 8 are, right now there is no mechanism, there has been no mechanism to pay that receipt. That invoice comes all the way back and has to start over again. Well, this bill would allow for partial payment. It would allow for those 8 items that were paid to be paid. It also allows for a pause for 10 days if maybe there was a typo or maybe something that didn't get said just exactly right and a number off or something like that. There was a 10-day pause that could be corrected and then go right back into payment. But then if that couldn't be worked out in those 10 days, just that part of it would fall off and would restart over on a 30-day. But the other 8 items would be paid, partial payment. Anybody that has ever tried to negotiate a contract, talk about how you want something to get done, one of the first things you say after you decide, this is what I want my garage built, or I want a roof put on, or I want whatever it is, then you say, well, how am I going to get paid? Do I need to get paid now? Do I need to be paid for the materials now? Do I need to be paid for the labor when? All of that stuff is a contract, whether it's verbal or written. But we want this to be a written contract. And so we went through all this portion of this and got agreed to language. This staff really, really worked hard to get agreed to language. Payment of 1% per month if it wasn't paid on time. A penalty, some kind of teeth to it. So we got this passed. This bill passed. It did have some appropriation with it. There were some things put on it in the Senate in A&R as it left. The last bill to leave before we left session. It got line item vetoed. Now, it is really disheartening to me, and I'm sure everybody could have a disheartening moment, that we worked that hard, this staff worked that hard, to get agreed to language that was line item vetoed. So we're just going to do it again. Because you can do it in regs, but they don't carry the weight of law. And I'm not talking about this administration or any administration. I'm talking about the future of Kentucky. Taxpayer money that we want to be spent properly. And properly means that you sit down and decide before you get the money how you're going to pay your bills, or it can be paid properly. And you can't negotiate if you don't know how your money's going to come in and pay your bills. That's why we've got nonprofits sitting here, because nonprofits have been hurt more and more over the years of being promised and then not having negotiating power, and everybody feel like they're doing almost a charity to come and help them because they don't know when they might get paid. You can't negotiate that way. There's no way to negotiate a good, solid contract with taxpayer money if you don't know when you're going to get paid. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you for allowing me to come and present. I'm going to file this bill again, and I hope we get it done within the veto period so that if it's vetoed, we can override a veto if that's what we want to need to do. Thank you.